So thank you everyone for being here today. Um, I'm just going to start off by talking a little bit, first of all, about the spiritual process, and then we'll go into the more logistical side of things. Um, Obviously, the spiritual process is important because that's why we're doing this journey. This is about very specifically, and I think the power of the Camino is the fact that we walk our talk. We're going into a place that's foreign, that's different, and we are going to be leading a lifestyle that's different, meaning that we're walking every day and we're in a different town every day. And then, of course, we're walking along a road that has been walked for many, many, many thousands of years by spiritual seekers of some sort. Even though, of course, nowadays the Camino is a Catholic pilgrimage, it definitely was a pilgrimage used before, because the pilgrimage always traditionally ended in Finisterre, which means the end of the world. And that is actually the westmost point in continental Europe, more or less. So, the old people understood that that was, sort of the farthest point of the earth. So they'd walk there in order to go to the end of the earth, which represents death. And of course, in those days, they had to walk back home from where they were. So then, having reached the point of death or the ultimate, they then walk back home reborn. And that is absolutely, what the spiritual intent of this pilgrimage is to walk, to channel that energy of the Camino. And I can guarantee you, even though we are walking in modern Spain and we're going to be, walking along highways and, some, more modern towns and so forth, we enter a timeless place. It's a timeless experience. Time itself changes. Somehow miracles happen. We manifest a whole lot faster. It's almost like, because we don't have the constraints of everyday life, and we can manifest faster because there's less in the way of less distractions in the way of us actually having our complete energy field focused and being able to sort of manifest and create what we want. So after just a few days of walking, it really feels like we're in a bit of a trance, and we're a little bit more emotional and we're a little bit more euphoric. And that's only from the walking. And then, of course, every day the spiritual process we'll be doing is the breathwork processes, the meditation processes, which we'll be doing every day, and I'll talk about those in a moment. um, so, the Camino itself holds a power. The intention of the Camino, in my opinion, is about kind of walking towards our spiritual death so that we can be spiritually reborn. And that's a pretty universal theme in deep spiritual matters. Another reason why I believe this is a very powerful initiation is, of course, because we're using our bodies. We are walking with an intention, which is in the head and the emotions, but it's being impacted in the body on a cellular level. So it's a very deep experience of having an intention and grounding it into the body. And of course, when it gets grounded into the body, the manifestation, the creation becomes all that much more powerful. So it's a really good way to literally, again, walk your talk. So you're walking in order to put into place your intentions. That, of course, means that your intentions are very important. And, it's obviously a good idea to get a sense of what your intentions are in the meantime. But we will have time also on the Camino to fine tune that. And we will be working specifically with an archetype. Each one of us will choose a specific archetype or god or goddess that we'll walk with, and that will become our powerhouse of archetypal information. It'll become our sort of personal guide along the way that helps take us into becoming this new person, integrating a new way of doing things. So that's the second aspect that's very important, apart from the Camino itself, which is an archetype and which holds an archetypal energy, the energy of the traveler, the tarot's fool who goes into the unknown and discovers him or herself in that unknown place. And the tarot, of course, is a very important part of the process. And I'll talk, well, that actually does tie in with the archetype aspect. So we've got the archetype of the Camino, then we've got the personal archetype we're going to be choosing ourselves and working with. And of course, this archetype will relate to the person that you want to become. So if you want to, for example, attract a relationship into your life, after the Camino, you might want to walk with the archetype of Aphrodite, for example, or some equivalent that relates to love. If you want to, make a lifestyle change, you might walk with someone like Hermes or Mercury, which is about, changing, adapting, making new things possible. Those are just a few examples. And of course, closer to the time, we will discuss those and I'll give you more information on that. And, you will be able to find the right archetype for you. So you're then going to be walking, literally, this archetype that you've chosen to help you be born into the new person that you want to become. So you're having an opportunity to actually rehearse on the Camino, becoming the new you. And of course, when we rehearse, we're kind of really grounding it in deeply so that when we go back to normal life, it becomes second nature. And the third aspect of this process is that each day of the Camino, we'll basically walk a different tarot card. I have also added into the process now, for those of you who have already done the Camino, I have added in one of the classical mythology deck cards as well. So we'll kind of be working with parallels, the tarot and the mythology deck. And of course, that mythology deck aspect brings a different nuance to the tarot that you may already know. So literally each day we'll be walking a card, and the tarot itself in this process will reflect the hero's journey. So we'll be going through the phases of kind of embarking on the journey, being called towards something, towards some sort of bigger task, to finding the treasure. And the treasure of the hero's journey is either material treasure, usually, however, it is some other treasure like spiritual knowledge, healing, relationships, love, as in the case of Orpheus, for example. So it's then going into the underworld, going into the absolute unknown in order to find and fight for that treasure. And then the last cycle of the Camino Hero's Journey process is about going back into the world, bringing that treasure back into the world so that you can benefit from the riches that treasure brings. So daily we'll be following a tarot card, which is kind of a map of the journey. And also daily I'll have some little journaling exercises that you might want to do. That of course is not compulsory, that's up to you. And then also every day we will have a group meeting and check-in. Most of the time that will be in the evenings around 6 p.m. We'll of course arrange that and discuss that beforehand, usually at 6 p.m. So then we'll do work like breath work or other rituals, other meditations, other processes, just to bring out sort of a level of richness to the whole journey for yourself. Some of the days we'll do the spiritual process along the road, which will imply that we'll kind of have to walk together a little bit, more or less. I know people walk at different paces and so forth, and I know it's really important to make space for that. So I think it's only like 3 days that we kind of need to walk together, more or less, in order to do those rituals. So that's kind of the spiritual aspect of this. That's what the processes themselves will involve. Of course, there's this bigger picture. We are using the smaller bits, the day-to-day work, in order to create the bigger picture, which relates to the hero's journey itself. And then, of course, tying that into the archetype, the power of the Camino as a physical and spiritual place, on this planet that holds an energy that is particularly powerful. So now we'll go to the logistics. I'll talk about the specifics like dates and so forth in a moment, but the first aspect that I want to address is that, of course, this process, it's a long process. It's 20 days, and as a group, we will, of course, obviously be seeing each other and meeting at the end of the day for group processing sessions. And usually we'll probably meet for dinner, and possibly you'll want to meet and talk with people, with pilgrims along the way. But the first thing I need to really assure you is this is not a process where we all have to walk together all the time, and where we're doing like a group activity process. It's very individual. The only rule that I have for the Camino, however, is that we all sleep in the same town. So you can sleep in a hotel of your choice. You can choose to sleep in a sort of dormitory style pilgrim's refuge, which is obviously a whole lot cheaper. You can sleep in a 5-star hotel if they're available. That's really your choice, but you must sleep in the town with the rest of the group. And that is because obviously if you start lagging behind, then you lose touch with the group. And I've had situations before where people actually do lag behind, and then they get very unsettled, and it just kind of creates a bad energy for everyone involved. So if you are feeling sick one day, or if you're too sore to walk, then I just request that you take a taxi or a bus to the next town, and then just meet up with a group there. And that's another point that I really want to establish. This process is not an endurance test. It's not about proving how far and fast you can walk. Obviously the walking is very much part of the process, but we're also not going to make it all about the walking. So if on a few days you don't want to walk because you're very tired, or you've got blisters and you want to take a rest, it's absolutely fine to take a taxi or a bus. Sometimes you might want to walk half the way and then bus or whatever the rest of the way. Again, that's absolutely fine. And I really do set it up that there's no judgment around that whatsoever, because sometimes people do actually get quite competitive, maybe with themselves or with other people, and it's actually quite ironic. Some of the people that have done the Camino, and they were very much about the walking and training and doing it right, and after day 3, this one lady actually twisted her ankle and she couldn't walk for 3 days. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, this is about the process more than it is about necessarily walking competitively. The other thing is we'll be walking on average 20 kilometers a day. Some days it might be 12 kilometers, other days 24 kilometers. I have kind of interspersed those. So if we've got a longer day of walking, the next day or the next few days will be shorter days of walking. And I've kind of figured out the route according to which are the nicer towns, towns that have either got nice architecture, or, that are in nice areas where there's nice forests or mountains around. So that was one of the criteria for choosing the towns. Other criteria, were, some of the towns are sacred places, like Sebreru, for example, has got the Holy Grail. It's got a very powerful energy. Other towns like El Acebo and Las Herrerías are just exquisitely beautiful, just like actually breathtakingly beautiful. So of course we rather want to spend time there. The other thing is the backpack, carrying the backpack. The suggestion is usually that your backpack should weigh 10 kilograms, or no, sorry, 10% of your body weight, which I find kind of impossible. Some people do manage that, okay? And we'll talk about the backpack in a moment. Some people do manage that 10%. However, If on some days or if every day you want to send your backpack on to the next town, that's also not a problem. Again, this isn't an endurance about, you get extra kudos if you carry your backpack every day. Um, you should be prepared to be able to carry your backpack if need be, as in, you don't want to take a suitcase with wheels. So you do need a backpack. You do need to be able to carry it, because some days it might happen that for whatever reason we can't get a taxi, or we need to walk to a certain place before we can get a taxi or whatever. So you need to be able to carry your bag. But the taxi services, there are transport services very specifically for taking backpacks to the destination, the town the next day. Oh, sorry, the town that evening where we'll be sleeping. So that's actually quite easy. It's quite effortless. So if you do choose to do that, that's also a possibility, which might mean you can have your backpack a little bit heavier, but you've then got that option of taxing it as well. I usually, I mean, my backpack's always heavy because I'm carrying extra stuff like agua florida and some of the other stuff we need for the processes. So I definitely sometimes will be sending on my backpack. If you do decide to send on your backpack, of course, you need a day bag, preferably like a very light, very small day pack that you can put some of your things in, that you don't want to necessarily send in the backpack. In my case, for example, I'll take my iPad in the backpack, and you'll need to you'll need to have maybe some warm clothing in your day pack in case the day warms up or cools down. So you'll need a few extra little things on hand if that's the case. I'll address clothing in a moment. I see there's a question about clothing. So that's for the backpack and the transportation. And again, the most important rule, the only real rule for me, is that we'll be sleeping in the same towns every night. The general rhythm of people is to wake up at about 6 or 7, start walking early, and then one gets to the town usually by about 1 or 2 p.m., depending on how fast or how early you started. And then, usually one has lunch, and then you can walk around the town that we're sleeping in a little bit, or have a nap. And then usually we'll have sort of the group meeting at 6 p.m. And then at about 7:30 or 8 p.m., usually we have a group dinner together. So the group dinners, of course, aren't compulsory, but they're a lot of fun. And, we do enjoy, that time together. But again, as I said, it'll literally be 2 or 3 days that I'm going to request that we all start at the same time and, do the process, maybe 2 or 3 hours into the 2 or 3 hours into the walk. So, but what we'll do in that case anyways, we'll sort of walk slower, or, we'll arrange that we can all catch up with one another. One of the staples of the Camino is your coffee, which is usually every hour or so. It does really keep you going. And, so one often has coffee breaks along the way, and we sort of, regroup a little bit as a group, not necessarily, coordinating with each other, but, we find each other along the way. And that gets me to the next point, which is food and so forth. Most of the days, with very few exceptions, there is a town every 2 or 3 or 4 kilometers. So usually every 1 to 2 hours, there is a town where you will be able to get coffee and snacks and a full breakfast if you want, and a full lunch if you want. So, food's not a problem. There's usually a menu del dia, which is a pilgrim's menu or a daily menu, which is about 10 to 12 euros. And that includes Americans say entree, but entree means like a first course, and then a main course, and then a dessert, as well as usually some wine and some water, all for sort of 10 or 12 euros. And so that's that's something very convenient. You know, you can have that at lunch or you can have it at dinner. Usually at dinner we all sort of have that together. So food is not an issue in most towns, not all towns, most towns. There are little shops where you can buy dried fruit, or where you can get, you know, something to put in your backpack and carry for breakfast. And yeah, toilet facilities as well. You know, usually there's toilets every 2, 3, or 4 kilometers along the way. You know, the Camino is very geared towards obviously feeding people and toilets and so forth. So some of the restaurants are not necessarily even in the towns. They might just be sort of halfway between the towns. So that really isn't an issue. There might be 1 or 2 places where it's a bit of a longer walk, but we'll discuss and prepare that the day before. The other thing then, of course, is accommodation. I will send you an updated list in the next few days of the towns that we'll be sleeping in, the final towns that we'll be sleeping in. Some of those towns you can, some of those towns you can pre-book, like on booking.com, in which case you can go ahead and do that on your own steam if you want. Otherwise, pretty much all towns have a pilgrim's refuge, which is a dormitory style refuge. It costs 5 to 10 euros a night, so it's very cheap. They're usually very clean, very pleasant. Might be snorers, so that's something to be aware of. Shared bathrooms, obviously, but the feeling in the refuges is really lovely. I don't sleep in refuges anymore. I've done 15 Caminos, so I've had it with refuges. But 1 or 2 nights as a group, we'll have to sleep in a refuge just because there's nothing else in the town. In other places, again, it's really up to you to choose where you want to stay. The refuges, generally speaking, don't accept bookings. Oh, no, not generally speaking, they don't accept bookings. So you've got to basically rock up there, first in, first serve. So if that's your option for that. But the other option that's quite economical is hotels, sharing hotels especially. So usually hotels will have a double room with 2 single beds, or 3 single beds, or 4 single beds often. And, that comes to, 15 to 25 euros a night. So it's not too, expensive. Obviously, if it's a single room, and depending on the level, the sort of the luxury level you stay in, not that there are usually very many options in that regard. In that sense, you're looking at about, let's say, for accommodation itself, 25 to 35 euros a night. And I see Tanya's asked you about the possible budget. So my suggestion is, for food, you're going to maybe spend 15 to 20 euros a day, depending on, on how much, on what you eat and how much you spend. I'd say, to be safe, let's say 20. And of course, depending on accommodation, you're going to be looking at 10 to 30 euros a day. Obviously, sometimes the pilgrim refuges are free, so sometimes they are subsidized by the Spanish government. Usually the private ones are about 10 euros. The only thing I can't say, and I really don't know, is I don't know how COVID has affected restaurants and hotels. I don't know if places have closed, for example, because there was no traffic along the Camino in the last 2 years. So hopefully that's okay. But just a brief look that I've had so far, it seems like there are still good options. So, I'd say the suggested budget, 50 euros, will be quite comfortable a day. Some days you can make it a little bit less. Some days you might get away with 30 euros, but I think you should budget for about 50 euros. The other thing I wanted to mention was getting to León. So, getting to León, there some flights and some companies and some kind of booking configurations allow you to fly to León. You obviously have to stop in Madrid, but and then you fly to León. But it's not always possible to find that configuration. Again, depending on your agency or which website you buy it through. So that is possible. And don't forget, it's León in Spain, Leon, not Lyon in France. People often get that confused. So it's from León in Spain, which is in Castile. The other option to get to León is flying. No, sorry, not flying. Taking the train from Madrid. It's about a 4-hour train ride. It's about 50 euros, I think. And it's a lovely train ride. It's very comfortable. The Spanish trains are amazing. Um, my suggestion is that you get to Leon, a day or two before we start the process, just so you can enjoy the town. It's it's kind of a small city. It's a beautiful city, magnificent architecture, and there's a real feeling of, the pilgrims. There's obviously pilgrims, just moving through the whole time. So you've really got that pilgrim feeling in the town, which is a nice way of kind of getting into the vibe for yourself. Then leaving from Santiago, there also are a few options. One very good option is to take the overnight train from Santiago to Madrid, if your flight's there. The benefit of that, of course, is that you get your train ticket as well as a night's accommodation. So the train ticket itself is a little bit more expensive, but then you don't have to pay for another night's accommodation. So that usually, I think it goes from 10 p.m. more or less to 7 a.m. it arrives in Madrid. That's option number one. Option number two, probably, probably the most convenient, is flying out of Santiago de Compostela. There are flights to Madrid, to Barcelona, several a day, I think. And then there are also flights to Paris, London, I think Milan, I think Amsterdam, but there are a few other flight options from Santiago Airport. So that's obviously a good option. We'll be closing our process sort of on the Friday morning, which is the 7th of July. So if you want to fly out of Santiago by about, you know, sort of noon, 1 o'clock, on the Friday the 7th, then you can do that if you want. We'll be spending one night there as a group. But my suggestion as well with Santiago is stay on a few days. It's a lovely city, really, really beautiful city. Um, my suggestion is at the end of the Camino anyway, you should try and spend 2 or 3 nights before you go home, if you can afford the time. Just because you don't want to get straight onto an international flight and go straight back into your normal life. You want a little bit of time to decompress. It might sound a little bit strange, but it's quite traumatic getting back to Santiago. It's quite traumatic getting back into a normal mode of functioning where you've got to think about things like times and getting on planes and, just dealing with everyday things. So, I really suggest you give yourself a few days, either in Santiago, maybe in Finisterre, or otherwise in one of the towns around there. There's a beautiful coastline around Santiago. Yeah, I do suggest that you book out of Santiago. I suggest you get that done beforehand, so that you don't have that stress of in Santiago trying to figure out flights, trying to figure out what you're doing. Booking the train is probably a little bit less difficult outside of Spain. The Renfe, and I'll write that down. The Renfe website is the train website. It's a little bit, it doesn't always work, but there are other ways of getting train tickets. But certainly with flights, you can do that ahead of time. EasyJet, Ryanair, Iberia, there's Vueling, there are several airlines available for that. So that's that. The other important factor is bags and backpacks. So from León or from Madrid, we can mail our excess baggage to a post restante in Santiago. So everything that you're not going to be carrying in your backpack for the 3 weeks, you can actually mail onto Santiago, and then we pick it up in Santiago on the Thursday when we arrive. So that's really a great service, meaning obviously if you're going to spend a few days in Europe before or after, you can just stick it into a box, or you can just mail on your hand luggage and it'll get to Santiago. It's very safe. I've never had any problems with that. And of course, it just frees you up a whole lot more. It also means you don't have to pack super light, coming from home going to along the Camino. So that's something. We'll make time for that in León to mail on our bags. And as soon as we get to Santiago, and as soon as we've kind of had our experience in the city, we will then go to the post office, pick up our bags, and so forth. Roman's question: the bag delivery from town to town is about €7 the last time I was there per bag. Sometimes it's possible to get a taxi, and we all just split the cost of the taxi ride, and the taxi driver might just put a little bit of a surcharge. So that might take it down to about €4, but you're looking at €4 to €7 a day. Maybe it's a little bit more than 7, just because the prices might have changed in the last 3 years or so. But again, it's very easy. It's a very easy process to do that. So that covers the bags. Now we'll get to what to take. So it's very simple, really. You're going to want 2 pairs of shoes. One is a pair of sandals, comfortable walking sandals, and another is a pair of walking, I suggest, sneakers, runners. I really do not suggest leather walking boots. If you need ankle support, that's fine, but get something light. I really like Merrell. I just find that they don't really create blisters. They're not shoes that you need to walk in. What I find with walking boots, even if you've had them for years and years and you've used them many times, they are quite heavy on the feet, and you're going to be walking with them more than you've ever walked in them before, and they could just really create quite a bit of strain in your body. In trail runners, I'm not sure, as long as your feet, as long as you're happy to walk in those, it's fine. It really is about comfort, but I do need to stress, I walk 80% of the Camino in my sandals, in my hiking sandals. They look hideous. I wear them with socks, as do all other pilgrims. So let's just get that shame out of the way immediately. The sandals are super comfortable. I don't get blisters. They give me enough support, and they breathe, of course. And if they breathe, that means that your feet stay drier, because obviously when your feet are more moist, it's easier to get blisters. That, of course, is a personal choice, but I really recommend you get like really good sandals, and it doesn't have to be super duper fancy ones, just good ones, $40 ones. And at the end of the Camino, I throw them away, and it really is money well spent. But of course, I do take my other shoes. I walk with Merrells just because I like them. They give good support. But once you're used to walking in sandals, it really feels very suffocating, for me anyway, to wear sort of closed shoes. But you do need 2 pairs of shoes in case it rains and your shoes are wet and so forth. So you do want that. Apart from the shoes, which are obviously super important, you should take 3 pairs of socks. And then my suggestion is 2 t-shirts, maybe 3 t-shirts at a push. They should be t-shirts that can be, that the sort of the dry fit, the fast dry t-shirts that you can kind of wash the night after you've walked, and then hopefully they're well dried, by the middle of the next day. So, 2 t-shirts is kind of fine. And then 2 pairs of shorts. I suggest sort of jogging shorts, or, shorts with integral underpants, or if you want to, bicycle shorts, cycling shorts. And you should have a pair of long pants as well. It's Usually in the morning it might be a little bit chilly, and then you're going to want sort of long pants, and then by midday it starts to get hot, so you might want to zip off the legs, for example. So if you get two pairs of those pants, that's also a very good option. um, then you'll need a swimsuit is a good idea. There are opportunities to swim. And of course you'll need, I'd say, one sweater. Again, get sort of a dry fit hiking sweater that you can wash, and that you can wring it out and it'll basically be dry the next day. And then a windbreaker. So obviously your sweater is for warmth. If it's very windy, your windbreaker will just sort of insulate warmth as well, but it'll just keep the wind out, and that should preferably be waterproof. And then, of course, the other essential item is your poncho, your rain poncho. So the poncho you must get. Usually there is one day of raining on the Camino. Sometimes there might be two or three. So you do need to be prepared for that. And I mean, the one year we were at the cross, and it was on the mountain, one of the highest points of the Camino, and it just started pouring. And I mean, it rained so much, my little raincoat and poncho meant absolutely nothing. I was soaked to the bone. It was a beautiful experience, but yeah. So you do need to be prepared for that. And often people sort of say, oh yeah, it's going to rain, it's so cleansing and it's so beautiful. It's not. It's a pain. It's really not pleasant to walk in the rain, so you do want to be sort of prepared. If it's a light drizzle, then it's romantic. Yes, when it gets heavy, it's not nice. And then that along those lines, you also need maybe like a waterproof protection for your backpack if you're going to be carrying it. And usually the backpacks have some sort of integral protection as well. And in terms of clothes, that's pretty much it. Another possibility or suggestion that you might want is if you want to have just like a light linen shirt. It doesn't need to be linen, it can also be like a synthetic material, but just like a light long sleeved shirt for the evenings. It's quite nice, because obviously during the day in your t-shirt you're going to be quite sweaty. So it's nice to have something just a little bit different to wear in the evenings. So that's another option. Then of course there's toiletries. That's really your choice. I've seen many people take many creams, many shampoos, and again, that's your choice. If you're not going to be carrying your bag every day, that's fine. If you are going to be carrying your bag, it really adds up very fast. So in terms of toiletries, my suggestion is toothpaste, toothbrush, maybe a moisturizing cream, definitely either a soap or a washing powder for your clothes. You will need that. You will be doing that every day. So that's kind of necessary. Sunscreen, obviously a hat, very important. Maybe you want to take sunglasses. Some of those things you can put in your fanny pack. Of course, once again, there's no shame on the Camino, so you're allowed to have a fanny pack as well, and it's actually highly suggested, because the last thing in the world when you're walking that you want to do is take off your bag, dig around to find your sunglasses. You want to be able to just have your things right in front of you in your fanny pack. Of course, your phone as well, and that sort of thing. So you want everything at hand quite easily. Of course, a journal is good. You might either want to take a very light journal. Don't forget you've got to carry it. You might want to do video or audio journaling on your phone. That's also a nice idea. I find that's, believe it or not, it's like, time is short day to day. When you're walking, you're focusing on walking, and when you get to the town, there's not all that much time to do stuff. So actually a video journal of yourself is actually a very nice way to do it. And then you can obviously do a few little sound bites along the way, and maybe later you put that together as a little sort of video of the whole process. It's quite a nice thing for yourself to have. So yeah, the other thing, of course, is the way, finding the way day to day along the Camino. There are arrows pointing the way. Usually, vandals don't try and fool the pilgrims, so you can pretty much trust those yellow arrows, which means you don't need to worry about carrying maps. Of course, you'll probably have your phone. The phone isn't always reliable, because in some parts of the mountain there might not be reception. I do suggest that in Spain you get a Spanish SIM number, a Spanish phone number. You don't have to, roaming has become a whole lot easier, but I do find that roaming is less reliable along the Camino than getting a Spanish number. So I'm going to probably get a Spanish number, but I'll still have Signal that we can be in contact on Signal. So then we'll just stay in touch there. And it is important that you have your phone, even though it's a nice romantic notion that you won't take your phone with. We do kind of need it because sometimes along the way we need to change plans. It happened once, for example, that one of the towns we went to was completely fully booked because there was a conference. So we had to let everyone know that we were going to be going to the next town, sleeping in the next town. And of course, sometimes I need to let you know, where accommodation is booked or not. Just going back to this, I didn't cover this before. So you can book ahead in some of the towns, not all of the towns. You can't book ahead in the Pilgrims' Refuges. But usually what we'll do is the night before or the day of, I will phone the hotels that I know or that I like. And if you want to join us in that hotel, you can just let me know and I'll make the booking for you. If you don't want to, then you just find your own way. But usually, I've actually never had a problem with not finding accommodation. So we'll figure the accommodation out along the way. But if you do want to go ahead and book on Booking.com, I do suggest that in some of the towns, that is a nice thing to do, just because it takes away some of the headache of finding a place and so forth. And I think that is basically it. The main thing about this process is, because you've got your arrows, because to follow your yellow arrows, because where you're sleeping more or less. Maybe your backpack is handled, maybe not. But the fact is, all you have to do every day is just walk. So it's an incredible feeling of freedom. There's no deadlines, there's no having to rush to get somewhere. So it just really is an experience of absolute freedom. And that is the real blessing of this. Apart from the beautiful churches that you see along the way, some of those churches are 1,500 years old and they've just got an incredible energy. In some of the towns, in one of the places, it's an old Celtic village ruin. And we'll do our process there. The group process there. It's very, very powerful. So it just really is a very beautiful adventure. But of course, having it in the group with a group, not only does it sort of intensify the experience because we bring sort of a process to the journey, but also, great friendships do develop along the way, and we really do have a lot of fun. It really is a fun experience as well as being, spiritual. There's a lot of laughing, there's a lot of joy, and a lot of freedom. So, it's not this sort of serious, I've got to be a pilgrim and I've got to abstain and renounce and so forth. It's a real full life experience.
The place furthermost west on the ocean, I forget how to pronounce it. It starts with an F, I think.
Yeah, Finisterre, yeah.
Is that an option for an ending at all for anyone?
If people want to do it on their own sort of steam, that's fine. I won't be, continuing the process there. But a lot of people, Santiago is the traditional end of the journey. But a lot of people walk the additional 80 kilometers to Finisterre, and that's about a 3 or 4 day walk. Um, I think it's kind of a good idea, but I think by the time you get to Santiago, you're kind of going to be tired of walking, so you might not want to do it. But if you are super motivated to do that, that's wonderful. But from experience, people kind of feel, okay, Santiago's a destination. I feel content with that. But of course, going to Finisterre by bus and maybe spending a night or two there is also great. I mean, it really is up to you. Sleeping outdoors, it's a little bit difficult. It's not really geared for that because usually we sleep in towns, and the fields around the towns are private property, so farmers don't take too kindly to pilgrims. Um, there's even one town where they've got these really, and I know Tanya will remember this, where they've got these really odd signs like showing, people going to the toilet and sort of saying, don't go to the toilet here because, pilgrims do their thing along the way. But the little diagrams are very graphic. So, so sleeping outside is a little bit difficult. Some pilgrims' refuges, they have spaces for that, but then you probably have to carry a sleeping bag and a sleeping mat and maybe a tent. And to that point, you don't really need to take a sleeping bag with you. If you intend to stay in refuges most of the time, then you can take a sleeping bag and maybe a pillowcase. If you don't intend to sleep in the pilgrims' refuges, I don't think you need to take a sleeping bag at all. You might just want to take a pillowcase because you might need it for various different things. So another thing that you might want to bring, and that's a good idea, is sort of a knife for cutting stuff. Like we're going to have picnic lunches from time to time, so you might want to bring a knife. Maybe you want to bring one of those camping forks and spoons to, when we have a picnic, that you can just use the fork and the spoon to eat out of. Maybe you want to bring a plastic cup, maybe a plastic plate. But that's up to you. We'll do about 4 or 5 or 6 picnics along the way. So they're also fun, where we just all pull a whole lot of cheese and chorizo and a whole lot of other things, and we just share our food, which is also very, very nice. Yes, there was another question.
Yes, it's me. It's Tanya. I don't have a question. Hello. Don't know if you can see me.
Yes, I
Hi,
can.
everybody. Excuse me for hijacking things. I don't know who's been on the Camino before, and I don't know if I'm even coming this year. I really hope that I am, but dates might be an issue. I just wanted to say that walking the Camino with Jacques was absolutely fantastic. Definitely a highlight of my life. And I want to just tell you this because he really holds the space very, very well, very containing. And yeah, it's a really absolutely fantastic adventure. So highly recommend it. Sorry, Jacques, didn't plant me in the audience.
Yeah, no, I didn't. But thanks, Tanya. That's beautiful.
No, and I really also just wanted to say I did it 5 years ago. We did it started in the last week of June. And although it was really hot, there were days that was very, very cold. I remember it was 3 degrees when we were at the Cruz de Herrero. So it is important to have something warm. And it did rain, and I was glad I had my hiking boots, although they were heavy. I really just wanted to say an absolutely wonderful experience. If you can do it, highly recommend it. That's it from me.
Good. So if there are no other questions, we will close at this point. Of course, I will be available. I will be in touch with all of you privately, or reach out to me in the next few days so we can talk further. So thank you, everyone. Sending lots of love, and hopefully see you next time in Europe. So stay well. Thanks for joining us today. Bye-bye. So let's start off with a little visualization, just to get us centered and to even just connect us a little bit with, with the spirit of the Camino itself. And then we'll take it from there. So what we're going to do is we're going to close our eyes. We're going to do 20 breaths. And how that works is it's 1 long breath, 4 short breaths. Okay, good. So let's close our eyes. Take a long, deep breath. And then 4 short breaths. And then 5 more. Just keep your eyes closed now. Just feel how you settle into this moment. Any of the worries and stresses of last night or this morning just dissolve. Just feel yourself very present in your body. You feel the gravity, the weight of your body. You feel the tug of the gravity of the earth just holding you in place, keeping you centered. Just feel any emotions that come up, either emotions coming up in this moment or otherwise prominent emotions that have been with you for the last few days or weeks, whether they are unpleasant or pleasant. Just take a long breath now to breathe them out and let go. And let go of any thoughts, worries, doubts, and fears. And also now just become aware of your soul, the presence of your higher self, this you beyond the you who you think you are, the you of your ego, just letting that go as you expand into an eternal self, which means it's a you that's vaster than you imagine, a you that knows what's right for you, knows what you need. So just expand into this eternal self. And given that this is a source of great inner knowing, great personal knowing, very specific to you, first of all, just check in with where you are in your life now. What's flowing, what's not flowing as much. Maybe you get a sense of dissatisfaction, or of course, also be aware of the areas where you are satisfied. And now if we assume that the Camino is an initiation into something new, cleaning the slate a little bit more, making more space in your life for the sort of life that you would like to lead, just allow yourself now to imagine that you're walking on the Camino, sort of halfway along. See yourself walking on a dirt road. See yourself walking in the sunlight with forests around you. You're in the mountains. Maybe you see cows walking in the fields and you hear their bells. In the distance you maybe see a stone church or village. And as you imagine yourself in this place walking the Camino, just get a sense of who you'd like to become, who you're becoming along this road. As you walk, maybe you're aware of a few aches and pains in your body. But above all, you just feel a great sense of contentment and peace. Great sense of just knowing yourself, being intimate with yourself, being vulnerable to your true self. So breathe that in, that feeling of freedom, that feeling of excitement, because each day on the Camino is an adventure, it's something new, it's something different. feel yourself on the Camino, as you feel in the space of freedom, get a sense even more of what you would like your life to become after, when you return home. What are you being initiated into? This might be intentions that you already have a sense of, or otherwise this might be something unexpected, something new, something different that comes to you. But let this vision for the future be held and influenced by the fact that you're on this path of freedom, this path of joy, this path of literally and figuratively walking your talk. So just getting a sense of that person you're becoming and are to become. Very good. So now, just take a long, deep breath. Just get a sense of any other message or anything else that you need to know, perhaps, a sense of knowing around something that's important. And when you're ready, just open your eyes, be back, return here, eyes open.